When I need answers about anything to do with personal growth, I go straight to my mom and my aunt. Here they are, Priscilla Babin and Tina Gilliatt with the Sister Sauce. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sister Sauce. I'm Priscilla Babin and that's my sister Tina Gilliatt.
Hey, I'm excited. Episode number 2. I think we figured a lot of things out last week, so I hope you'll stick with us. I wanted to give a special shout out to Clover Babin, offspring of Priscilla, who did a fantastic job as our announcer for our recordings, made everything sound so professional. So yay, Clover.
Yay. Tina, do you have any hot sauce for us this week?
I do. I wanted to clarify that hot sauce is not necessarily something that we're mad over, like hot over, but hot sauce can be anything that adds the zest, right? And so today, what I want to share with you is about blessing bracelets. I watched a movie on the Hallmark Channel recently called The Blessing Bracelet. It was so good. It was actually very good. And it was about a young lady that made these bracelets. And it's a bracelet with 4 beads on it, or 4 stones, however it's made. And each one, on a daily basis, you're supposed to touch each bead and think of a blessing that you have. And in it, the character was giving these blessing bracelets out to people, and it was changing lives. And I just thought it was so wonderful. And I think what it did for me was just directed my thoughts to wanting to be more observant of my blessings and less mindful of all the things that go wrong. We're always, oh, it was such a horrible day, but we don't think about the blessings. And the first one, of course, is that we wake up in the morning, right? But it was just a precious movie. I'm a sucker for a good Hallmark movie. I love to cry. And it was just wonderful. And I will share with you that as soon as the movie was over, I Googled blessing bracelets, and there are plenty of them for sale on Amazon. They run about $30. And they also have them on Etsy. Different people make them on Etsy, and the prices vary on Etsy. But on Amazon, it's pretty much 30 or 35. But great little tool. You could probably make your own if you wanted to, but I thought that was the coolest thing. And by the way, I added one to my wish list for Christmas. So if anybody's listening and wants to buy me something from my Amazon wish list, I won't be offended.
All right. That's some good hot sauce.
How about that? Yes, be thankful for
Spicy
your blessings. Count your blessings.
Well, our meat sauce this week is might be a little controversial of a topic. We got on a discussion a few weeks ago about toxic masculinity. And the definition that I found for toxic masculinity, what it actually means is toxic masculinity is an attitude or set of social guidelines stereotypically associated with manliness that often have a negative impact on men, women, and society in general. A lot of people don't think that's what it means. A lot of people just immediately get offended by the phrase, the same way they get offended by the word feminism, which we'll talk about later. But they think that it means that being masculine is toxic, but being masculine is not toxic.
No.
And I mean, I don't even know how we came up with this is masculine and this is feminine. It's kind of crazy, but the discussion shall commence. It's not like it says, it is not a blanket statement that all masculine things are bad. But we shall expound upon that.
Yes, let's explore that a little bit.
Where did they come up with this phrase?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that when I was researching this, I came across a cartoon that was like two people fighting, a man and a woman, and it said something about toxic masculinity versus toxic femininity. I can say that 3 times fast. Toxic femininity. And I thought that was kind of funny. So I'm sure toxic femininity is defined as feminism for most men, but that's not true at all. But I agree with you. I think that being masculine is not a bad thing. I've always been attracted to the macho man, but not the abusive kind. You know what I mean? So the term toxic masculinity supposedly came about because it was used by a psychologist, Shepard Bliss, in the 1980s and 90s. So this cracks me up that these terms have come about years ago and we don't discover them, right? You and I were talking about that with, we went in a discussion about narcissism and gaslighting. And I said, supposedly gaslighting is from a movie many, many years ago, and I had never heard of it before until fairly recently. But anyway, this doctor, psychologist, Shepard Bliss, sought to separate the negative traits of men from the positive ones. And so that is right there in a nutshell, tells you that being masculine is not bad. It's just the positive traits are not associated with toxicity, whereas the bad ones are, the negative ones are.
Yeah. And so the best way to pinpoint what is toxic masculinity and what is not, I think, is from just rough examples. And everybody's got, I know everybody has seen it. Everybody has seen it, but people who are toxically masculine, I guess would be the way to say it, would probably deny that it even exists, much less be able to pinpoint examples of it. But you have to think deep down, somewhere inside a toxic man, he would be able to have some little voice of reason, conscious, thought that says, hey, that's not a good thing, stop telling these women to smile.
When they need a very strong woman that says, oh, no.
Yeah. And my favorite, well, we love the TV show The Office, the American one. The British one was good, but there was only a handful of episodes. And I just a Office huge fan. I don't know if I'd call myself a super fan, but I'm a huge fan of The Office, and I can practically recite some whole episodes, but there are a million examples of toxic masculinity on The Office. And the great thing about it is, though, is you see such a wide variety between certain characters. You'll have certain characters that you think of as good guys, and certain ones that you're like, oh, he's a mess, and he needs a lot of work and personal. But my favorite thing in any TV show, and I have to say, if I'm watching a TV show and it doesn't have it, it's a turnoff, and I'll tend to get, lose my interest. But I love to see personal growth in the characters on a TV show.
Yeah,
and in book series,
Sure.
The Office has, they made a point. We've listened to The Office ladies, and I know I listened to a bunch of other Office related podcasts. Brian Baumgartner has his podcast. He did a shorter one, and then he did one that was more in depth, all about behind the scenes. And so we get to hear the thought process of these writing these characters. And they made a point towards the end of season 7, because they knew Steve Carell was leaving, that they had to increase the rate of his personal growth to get him to the point where everybody was satisfied with the character before he left. And he was just, you go back and you look at episode 1, and if I know a lot of people listening might not have even ever watched one episode of The Office ever, but it was a pretty popular show, and people have seen at least one clip from the show. But Michael was a disaster at the beginning.
Yeah.
He did not understand how to not sexually objectify every woman around him. He did not know how to speak appropriately in front of anybody. and he was so wrapped up in himself, and everything. So his behaviors, that's what she said jokes and everything, those are pretty classic examples of toxic masculinity, his misbehavior. And of course, if you ever did see the show, you have to know who Todd Packer is.
Oh,
and he was like the pinnacle of toxic masculinity, right?
for sure.
But even John Krasinski's character, Jim, he was everybody's favorite. He was the golden boy, right? But even he had moments like when I guess we need to be more specific. When he decided he wanted to go and work for a new company, it was a starter company that was athletic management, and he wanted to go off, and he was very passionate about it. And Pam's home with the kids by herself while he's running off to Philadelphia, every other day to go work there. And he totally, it just took everything she was doing for granted and felt like, I'm the man, I'm the breadwinner. And even when they first got together, when they first got married, and he goes and buys a house for them without telling her.
Yeah.
That's and I mean, some of these things are just negative, not personality traits, but negative behaviors. And none of us is perfect, obviously, and people make mistakes, but some things tend to be, it's a cause and effect, right? Don't you think?
It's true.
Can you think of any of?
Well, so The Office, let me just say this on a side note for everyone. If you've never watched The Office, or if you've tried to watch it and didn't, I was one of those people that didn't want to watch it. But you have to give the characters a chance to grow on you. So at least watch the first season and into the second before you make the decision that it's not for you. Because if I had given up when I wanted to, I wouldn't have gotten the enjoyment out of it that I did. It was a fabulous show. But for people who don't watch The Office, I can think of a couple of examples. One very clearly is if you've ever watched How I Met Your Mother with Neil Patrick Harris, his character, Barney, is the biggest, most toxic masculine person on the show. He is constantly objectifying women and makes it a joke. It's all about how much you want to bet I can get this woman to go home with me. And the interesting thing about it is, in real life, he is the total opposite of that. He's gay. He's a sweetheart of a guy, just a fabulous person. And I've watched so many interviews with him. But on that show, I just wanted to smack the bejesus out of him. But like Priscilla said, eventually you see his character growing, and he gets in a relationship with Robin on the show. And that is a delight to watch, Barney evolving into a better person. He still slips every once in a while, but I find it funny. And also our beloved The Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah.
Sheldon is a lovable character, but in a lot of ways, he's toxically masculine. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think any woman is as good as him. And so I mean, some of the stuff he does is because he's weird, but some of it you think, why is he so dismissive of women? But he meets Amy again. It's the strong women that help these men overcome toxic masculinity.
Did we find the thread?
So we just have to hook all these guys up with someone who can have enough patience with them to get them through it and become. One of the things that I read was if for toxic masculinity, one of the symptoms of it, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but one of them is that they don't express their feelings, right?
Mm.
And even though I never would have considered my husband, who I've been with now for 42 years, 2 dating and 40 married, toxically masculine, when we first were dating and married, he never expressed his feelings about anything.
Mm.
I used to say, I hate it when you say, I don't care. Because I would say, what do you think about this? I don't care. I don't care. And I would get so angry and I would say, I know that you care. You just don't want to express your feelings because that's just not what you do. And then he worked out of state for about 6 weeks and he wrote me these beautiful letters that and said in the letters things he had never said to me in person. And I thought, when I was researching this with you, I thought, I wonder if we could just get these guys to write down how they feel, and that would kind of open the door. But some of them probably wouldn't even want to do that.
Mm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what are some other symptoms, or I guess, or signs that exists?
Um, well, definitely. I mean, you see the classic ones in the business places, right? Like I was telling you the other night, we were watching the show Superstore, another fun show where you can see examples of toxic masculinity and misogyny. That's one I had never heard of, Superstore, and one of my kids put it on and we end up watching the whole thing. I don't think I've seen every single episode because I was busy doing other stuff around the house, and so I was kind of in and out. But they have, it's just another ensemble cast. So whenever you have a wide variety of people on the screen, it's you're gonna find it, and it's a classic joke, right? It's the cringe comedy, right? So it was on, and they were talking about women not making as much money as men to do the same job. And he said, that's not real, is it? He's like, is that a real thing? And I said,
Joey said that.
yeah. I said, yeah, it is. It's a real thing. And he was just flabbergasted. He was like, that's not right. And I'm like, well, duh. But there it
Well,
is.
cheers for Joey.
Yeah. So
Raised by a strong woman.
that's me. I just made a strong arms gesture for those of you on the podcast who can't see me because I forget. But the top, has got to be the inequality in wages, and you see it everywhere. Sports, entertainment, it's in every type of business, right? And then other ones is, that if you go back and you look at like those old ads from the 1950s, and they're like, ladies, when he gets home, you should be dressed to the nines and have your makeup just so, and your hair, and the house is sparkling clean, and dinner is ready to go, and it's still hot, whenever they happen to show up, and and the children are well behaved and neat and orderly, and there's no dirt on the carpet, and crazy, you got to live up to your man, meanwhile you've been run ragged all day. It's not realistic, but it's this idea that sees women as their husband's servants. It's this sort of puts us on a lower level. They're our lord, and we're just this waif that's supposed to cook and clean and serve the master, and that's gross. And there's tons of other, there's tons of other ones, and I've joked about at the beginning, like guys telling women to smile, like, or she'd be prettier if she smiled.
Ugh.
They just want to slap them. It's crazy because nobody goes up to a man and does that to him.
This is true.
Nobody's going up to and this the attitude, oh, the laughing thing. We talked a little about that when we were discussing it before this. I don't know if any of you ladies have ever experienced it. And gentlemen, if there is any men listening, don't do this. When a woman is talking to you, when you're having a conversation, especially if it's somebody you don't know or don't know that well, I feel like it happens more often in those situations where there'll be some miscommunication and it's trying to be figured out or whatever, like going through the drive-through and there's a miscommunication about a coupon or something. This happened to Tina. And then the man does the mansplaining thing where he thinks you're just dumb and he tries to tell you, and then he does it in this laughing way, and it's not like ha ha ha, it's not that kind of laughing. It's like they get a goofy grin on their face and they laugh, and it's definitely directed at you.
Oh
They're
yeah, it's
laughing at you.
condescending,
It's
condescending.
very condescending and like, oh, you're so dumb, you know.
Hmm.
They don't
Oh
say
yeah,
it, but that is the implication. You are dumb. They are thinking how dumb you are. You're so cute. You're so dumb.
yeah,
Don't do
yeah.
that. If a man laughs at me, I'm to the point in life where he's getting knuckles in the Adam's apple. That's
Well,
just
wait,
gonna
this might be
happen.
hot sauce instead of.
This is it's the one spicy meatball. This meat
So,
sauce.
I just wanted to say, you made me think of it. You mentioned like the whole mansplaining thing and everything. It kind of reminds me of back in the day when I was young, back in the day. Good gravy, I'm aging myself. Back in the day when I was young and I was working, I was around a lot of this toxic masculinity. I'm still working. I don't know why I said it that way, but I was around a lot of these corporate executive types and everything. And it drove me nuts when they would take that tone with me. And always in my head, it was, don't worry your pretty little head about this. It's of no concern to you. And I'll never forget. I
Mm.
was working for a new boss. I was hired before he was. He was hired and came in and started trying to tell me how to do my job after I had been there for 6 months, and he was hired in over me and started questioning me. And I said, well, no, that's not the way it works. We have to do this. And it was all about a data system. And
Mhm.
I knew what I was talking about. But because he wanted to prove his authority over me, he questioned everything I did and tried to make me feel stupid. And
Mm.
he was famous for gaslighting me. But that was what I heard. I'm standing there listening to him, and I know it wasn't the words he used, but and I was young back then, but it was, don't worry your pretty little head about it. Just do your job. And because I would question some of the things he was telling me to do that I knew weren't right. And I've been there before where I've been responsible for editing documents, and I could tell that some of the work that people had put into it was not their own, and they were taking credit for it. And when I'd question it, it would be like, you just go do your thing, little girl. And
Mm.
so yeah, for sure, for sure.
Wow.
But you know, like where did this all come from? Where did men get this attitude? Or some men, let's clarify. What caused some men to be like this? I mean, it wasn't my
Well,
fault. I raised my kids to play in kitchens and hold baby dolls.
we could take it all the way back. We could take it all the way back to Adam and Eve, an original sin. And I'm not saying that toxic masculinity caused that. I'm saying it's from it. Like, I mean, everything bad in the world comes from there, right? So and you look, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. But you go through the Bible and you read, and there's some stuff that I'm pretty sure toxic masculinity had an influence on.
This is true. This is
And
true.
we were raised, the Bible is the unerrant, inspired word of God that he put, and I even hesitate to use male pronouns for God anymore because God is not one gender. But he put the words in the man's head and the man wrote it down. And that's the Bible. That's the more I read the Bible for myself for study and look at it and see that what I was told, that there are no contradictions in the Bible, and then there are blatant contradictions in the Bible, which that's a whole nother topic. But there's some influence of toxic masculinity because women were made to be subservient. And when they were on their cycle, they were unclean. And I can understand there were some things that were done a certain way for practicality, like the whole kosher thing. They didn't have ways to properly preserve pork and people were getting sick. Okay, that makes some sense to me. But there's other stuff. There's other things that's just like that kind of just spiraled, and then that
But
went
Jesus
into,
never did that. I mean,
no, he
Jesus
didn't.
held value in women.
That should
And
be the clue.
right, right.
And from there, of course, we have all these stereotypes. We were talking about stereotypes earlier. Men have to be manly, men have to be tough. Even as little boys, they're told, don't cry, man up, walk it off, you
Be a
know.
man. Be a man. You've heard that a
Yeah.
lot.
Uh-huh. I mean, it's in Mulan. Even Disney did it. In order to be anybody, she had to pretend to be a dude.
Yeah, this is true.
And then of course, and then you could my mind was churning on all this a couple of weeks ago, and I started thinking about comparing toxic masculinity to racism. And I know that's a completely different topic, but there's a parallel in that it's an ideology. And you hear the term institutionalized racism, and I thought, is institutionalized sexism a thing? And I looked it up, and there's tons of articles on that. And this idea of man is better than woman, man is smarter, stronger, able to do more, tougher, and so I think that's the roots, as it were.
Yeah.
And so we know it's bad for us as women to be on the other side of it. Tina, why do you think that it's bad for men?
Well, I mean, I mentioned before that one of the things I read was that they bottle up their emotions and they
Mm-hmm.
don't express them. So that leads to things like depression, which lead to things like alcoholism and drug abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't communicate how they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling. It's so funny because a classic joke is that men say that they have to read their wives' minds because the wives don't communicate. I don't know about you, but that's never been a problem in my marriage because I say how I feel. I don't hold back. And I think AJ wishes I would shut up sometimes and hold my tongue. But that's one of the things that men do is that they don't communicate. And I guess maybe the men don't expect us to read their minds. They don't even want us to.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things. And of course, then that makes it difficult for them to maintain a relationship. They can't
Mm-hmm.
stay in relationships because they don't communicate with their counterpart. Even in gay relationships, I mean, you have to have communication. And
Mm-hmm.
so even if it's two men, if one doesn't communicate, it's not going to work out, right? So
Yeah.
uh, all relationships are affected, even in your outside of romantic relationships,
Mhm.
even in normal, well, not normal, what's the word I'm looking for?
Friendships.
Just unromantic relationships,
Yeah.
friendships. Yeah, use that.
Friendship, a
Friendships and
business, work.
business relationships, right? They don't express themselves, and so they can't maintain those relationships and form connections with people like they should. And again, that can lead to depression and other things. And suicide is at the utmost worst on the list. But the other thing is that men are less has less likely to ask for help. And not all men, but men who exhibit these toxic masculinity traits, they are less likely to seek help.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I don't have any cold hard facts on it, but somewhere I read something about how there are more women in therapy than there are men, simply because women are more willing to ask for help and admit that they're upset about something or having a problem, which goes back to me saying, why do women get the bad rap that we don't tell our men what we want? Because most of the
Hmm.
time we don't shut up about it. So
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
everybody knows I don't remember what the actual stats are, but we speak way more words than men do. And
yes.
yet we're said that we don't communicate. But
Yeah.
I think you were talking about that before, and I was thinking the toxic masculinity, the way it presents, it's not toxic masculinity isn't just things that are said or bad behaviors. It's an attitude of the person who does them. And there's varying degrees. I mean, even like I was talking about Jim from The Office before, everybody loves Jim and he's like the ideal mate, right? For any straight woman would think, a guy like Jim, unless they're after a bad boy or something, but he was always pranking Dwight, so he had a nice mix. But don't send me off on a Jim tangent. But he was the good guy, and he still
Yeah.
screwed up every once in a while and did things that were toxically masculine, but it was fewer and farther between, obviously. So there's different types of guys, but some men are so domineering, I guess is the word I'm looking for, or have such a strong attitude about their rightness, if that makes any sense, that I think it causes, especially a woman who tends to be on the timid side, to not speak her truth. And that was a great arc there with those characters. If you've never seen The Office, um, there's a whole relationship arc with Jim and Pam, and from the time they're just flirting with each other all the way through their marriage, going into having some difficulties and having to work them out. And at the beginning, Pam's in a relationship with somebody else and she never speaks her truth, and she withers under his gaze, and she is a doormat, and she
Yeah.
has so much personal growth. And I've heard it said, and it was from people who were involved in the writing of the show, that Pam was the heart of the show. And she goes through this major, personal overhaul and just blossoms. And by the end, she is speaking her truth. And that way, if this toxic masculinity comes out, she's fighting it. So I think that's where it comes from, is toxic masculinity. Nobody was fighting back in the olden days of the 50s. The man was the head of the house, and that was that. And
Oh,
the
for
women
sure.
didn't have any say. So if we don't have any say, then how will they know what we think or how we feel?
Yeah. I know this is sort of a little off topic, but when mom was young and working in a professional field for the first time was when she was on contract teaching, and she found out she was pregnant for you at the age of 40 and
Mm.
didn't want to tell any of her coworkers who were pretty much all men at the
Mm.
time because she was afraid she would lose her job because she was pregnant. So she hid her pregnancy all the way till the end of the semester, was off for the summer, thankfully, because you were born in late August. And
Mhm.
so she was able to quit working while it was still relatively early in her pregnancy. But when she went back, she continued to hide the fact that she had just had a child, and she walked up 3 flights of stairs or
Mm.
2 flights of stairs to get to the third floor because the elevator was broken and she was fresh out of the hospital like 5 days earlier. It just blows me away. And
Yeah.
she was such a strong woman. But in that day, you did not speak up
Yeah.
about things, sexual harassment, gaslighting, anything. Of course, we didn't know back then that there was anything wrong with any of that. I guess people knew, but nobody was willing to bring it up.
Mm. That reminds me, in the future, we should have an episode talking about toxic work ethic.
Yes, and elevator etiquette too, because I have a lot of
That
stuff
could
I'd like
that
to
could be the
share
hot
about
sauce that
elevator
goes with it.
etiquette. I've ridden in a lot of elevators when I worked in the CBD, the Central Business District, not CBD oil. I said something about the CBD the other day, and my daughter Olivia got so confused. She's like, "What, Mom? What? You used to work in CBD?" No, maybe I worked in the CBD, the Central Business District. But anyway, my office was in a building that had 44 floors. I forget what floor we were on, but it was up there. I think it might have been like 23 or, and so I rode the elevator a lot, and I have a lot of elevator stories I could share.
All
So
right.
I know that's way off
Put
topic.
a note on it. We're gonna
Did
do it.
you find any statistics or anything about toxic masculinity? I know you did a lot more
Um,
research than I did.
well, I found an interesting article, and I found the link. We'll put the link in our notes, but um it was they did I had a little trouble understanding the article because they had some stats and then they had stuff about an actual study. So I don't know if the stats were in general, like worldwide, and then the stuff about the study was below that. But the
Oh,
stuff that was at the top, they said 37% of boys and young men are experiencing mental health difficulties, but half are unable or unwilling to ask for help. 46% wouldn't ask for help for a problem that was making them upset, anxious, or depressed, even if things got really bad. And that was in quotes. 30% say they feel weak or ashamed, and 21% are worried that people would laugh or think less of them. And 14% said they would feel less masculine. So that's, related obviously to the part that's bad for men, in that it's bad for young boys. And I think that kind of leads us into, I'm kind of jumping ahead on our itinerary, but the the fact that they can't express themselves, and they feel like they can't be emotional and show emotion without being emasculated, is really sad. And I think it holds men back, especially in terms of their mental health. And you look at these things, like there was another shooting in Maine yesterday.
that was just
You
horrible.
see all these mass shootings. I can't even think of an example. I know there's some female serial killers, but I can't think of off the top of my head. It might exist that there was a mass murder by a female, but it's generally men. And I think it's because their mental health has been hampered by this idea that you don't ask for help, you don't talk about your feelings. So it's all inside. And at some point, it's just going to explode out all over everybody. And
Hmm.
so I think that gets us into, you know, how do we change it? And I think it starts at home, right?
Oh, I agree. I think so. Jokingly mentioned encouraging my kids to, when my kids were young and I was raising 2 boys, that I didn't hesitate to buy dolls for them, and
Mhm.
we had a kitchen all set up, a full play kitchen in our playroom. And I caught a lot of smack talk about that from male friends and relatives of ours because they said I was raising sissies. But it blew me away because how many I always was so frustrated with PJ, my oldest, who has since passed away. And I believe that a lot of his issues were that he was self-medicating, and that's what put him into addiction because he had emotional issues relative to the fact that he was adopted and felt, I don't know. I wish I knew. But at any rate, what my point is that they don't know how to express themselves, and and it's our job as parents to make counseling available to our kids, especially our boys, and to show them the positive side of masculinity, the idea that men can be emotionally expressive and to have female friends and mentors. I saw a post on Facebook this morning by a young man that I have mentored. And he made the comment that he wanted to, today he was thankful for all the people who had mentored him in his life. And a lot of his posts are relative to men that have taught him things or mentored him. And I wanted to comment and say, he didn't say men, but I wanted to comment and say, what about the women tours? Not just the mentors. But I'm sure that this young man, who is so precious, probably would acknowledge that he had some women mentors in his life. And but yeah, we need to encourage our kids and make them realize that I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm on a tangent because right now I'm thinking, did I raise a toxically masculine young man in PJ? Because I know he loved women, but he also valued them. He did value them, and he never looked down on women or thought they were incapable. I hope that's true anyway. God bless him. He's a sweetheart. But so let's see. Toxic femininity. Why can't I say this word? Femininity. I'm going to have to do a TikTok, the word I pronounced wrong and was so embarrassed about, femininity. I saw a video like that this morning. It wasn't that, though. Toxic femininity refers to the adherence to the gender binary in order to receive conditional value in patriarchal societies. And I know that's a quote from one of the articles you read, which we will put in the show notes. But it's a whole concept that restricts women being cooperative, passive, sexually submissive, gentle, and deriving their value from physical beauty while pleasing to men. Yeah. I love the video that you sent me about the camera not recognizing the beauty in the sunset or whatever. And we need to look at that as ourselves. If we take a picture of ourselves that we don't like, it's not because we're not beautiful. The camera just was not equipped to find our beauty. And I love that because so many women are stuck in, admittedly, I have been upset when I've gained weight or my hair is frizzy. You know, a lot of my hair was falling out after my treatment for my eye disease, and it drove me crazy. And God bless women who have had to go through so much worse and deal with all that, because a man going bald after chemotherapy, they don't think a whole lot of it. But a woman, that's really a challenging thing. And I think, you know, in our own case, our mom was always so put together and so beautiful and every little hair in place. And now that she's older, she struggles with that. That's one of the things she struggles with. And you and I have both done a lot to try to help her feel beautiful. But I remember when Dad died, the pastor asked Mom, what was she going to miss about Dad? And she said one of the things was that Dad was the one person who every morning when he woke up, he would say how beautiful she was. And that just was so precious to me. I remember Dad saying that to Mom a lot. And um, she didn't need that validation. It was nice to hear though, right? But that's because she grew up in a time where physical beauty was so important in
Mm-hmm.
women, right? And so, and being Gentile and being a lady,
Mm-hmm.
and not being emotional. I mean, women are historically expected to be emotional, but some men don't like you to be emotional. I got to preface that with some men. I remember being in a conference room one time arguing my case with my two bosses about something, and I started to cry.
Mm.
And my one boss said to me, why are you so emotional? This is a professional work environment and you're getting emotional. And I said, this is personal to me. It affects my salary and what I use to support my family. And this is a personal thing. And I'm sorry if I'm being emotional. And I said, but what would you call your slamming the chair into the table yesterday and using a 4-letter word when you were angry about the outcome of our budget proposal? And I said, isn't that being emotional? So why is your being, again, I'm the one with the mouth. I will speak up. I will not. But I think in some ways it has hurt me and in some ways it has helped me. But
Yeah.
we can definitely teach our children, female
Mm-hmm.
and male and non-binary,
Mm-hmm.
that they need to be firm in communicating with people who offend them. And
Mm-hmm.
and in all cases, not just in a toxically masculine way. If
That's
anybody
true.
offends you, I am one of those people, and I know you are as well, who it's sort of like who's got mail. That's not the name of the movie. You've got mail. And you've got mail. Remember, Meg Ryan's character says she always thinks of what to say later that is
Mm-hmm.
me. And I know you have encountered that as well.
Yep.
Somebody will say something and I'll think it was so hurtful. And later I go home and I'm thinking, why didn't you say this? And why didn't you say that?
Oh,
And
and you spend the whole rest of the day thinking of what you would have said and wishing you could have said
yes,
it.
yes. And somebody on TikTok or somewhere came up with this response that you could use in almost any case that you can use, but I can never think of what it was. But it was something
Mm,
along the lines of, and what do you hope to gain by telling me that?
mm,
Or what is your motivation for saying that to me? I mean, I've been told that I talk too much by other women who should be
mhm,
straightening my crown instead of smacking me in the head and stealing it.
mhm.
And can you tell I'm bitter? But it's the truth. Some people just will say the meanest and dumbest things, and you
Mhm,
just want to say, and how did that add value to you or me just now? But
mhm.
so, yeah, definitely teach
Yeah.
your kids to speak up.
Speaking up, I think the getting out of the toxic femininity. Oh, I said it. Uh,
Femininity.
I didn't realize I'd said it till
Are
I
you,
finished.
I know
Um, but yeah, getting out of that, like speaking your truth and speaking up for yourself, if you are a woman or anyone, is helpful. And another thing, we kind of touched on it, but I'm realizing I don't think we addressed it individually specifically. Homophobia and
oh,
transphobia are huge
yes,
symptoms of toxic masculinity.
for sure. And
And I
transphobia
mean,
for
there's plenty
sure.
of
Yeah.
homophobic and transphobic women too, but it's exacerbated in the man who is toxically masculine, I think. But yeah, so the teaching the kids at home when they're young, and I think it's not just moms telling boys don't be toxically masculine, and this is what some examples, and don't do this and don't do that. Not just that, but if they could have male role models in their life, because kids learn from watching other people. They don't you can talk their ears off about stuff and they might remember some of it, but what makes the biggest impact on kids is what they see people doing. And, I think I always worry, have I been a good enough parent? And
Oh,
I know you worry too.
I know.
But I
Yeah.
think our example is the most important thing. And, if they see you doing the things that you think are good things, those are the things that they're going to remember and copy. And maybe not when they're, younger and going through, all the hormonal upheaval and their brain is developing. It might not hit them until they're in their 30s where they're doing, the things that they always saw you doing. But I think that's as parents and as people who have an influence over anybody younger, whether it's nieces, nephews, students, whatever, you need to be conscious of your own behavior in front of them and think, is if they grow up and behave like this, is that going to be something I'm proud of, having an
Yeah.
influence on?
Yeah.
And so, and then
It's all about being a role model. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the thing too, learning to speak up for yourself and take charge. And I've never really been that kind of person. And that's one of my regrets is I wish that, I didn't really start to be more confident in myself and take up for myself until I was in my 40s, I don't think. And I wish that my kids had seen a better example of that. And I'm glad they have you for an aunt who is,
Yeah.
the one who would be like, don't do that.
Oh, heck no. For sure. Yeah. And I think it's also important that your kids are exposed to everybody
Mhm,
and you need to be aware of who your kids are exposed to, not necessarily so you can change it. I mean, obviously you want to change it if it's dangerous behavior, but there are some cases where
mhm,
there are people that you love very much that are still don't know how to speak positively in front of kids. And if we see that happening and we can use it as a teachable moment with our
mhm.
kids, there
Yeah.
have been people that my kids have been exposed to where I've gone home after an event or whatever, and I'd say, okay, do you see how Joe behaved to Sydney or whatever? That's not the behavior that people should exhibit, and don't copy
Mhm,
that. Something as simple as just somebody being rude to somebody else
mhm,
or not being polite. And I'm thankful that I think all of our kids have always been polite and
mm.
uh,
Yeah.
well-rounded and just know how to behave themselves in public situations. So kudos to us for that. This was a good topic.
Yeah.
I
It's
think we could
juicy.
really get,
Some juicy sauce.
yeah, really juicy meat sauce. Like you said, a spicy meatball. Well, awesome. Very good. Do you have any sauce for thought that you
Uh,
want everybody to think about this week?
I have one and I'm keeping it real simple. Uh, I know I've beaten this subject firmly into the ground and it's,
Not on our podcast.
yeah, no, not here yet. But in every other aspect of my life, probably stay hydrated. You've got to drink water. And I know some people, I have a kid, they do not like water. They hate water. They never drink water. If actually both my middle kids seem to have some kind of, it's almost like they got rabies. They have an aversion to water. That's a rabies fact for you. People who they have hydrophobia if you get rabies. But anyway, that was way off the topic. But they
It's
don't like
related.
water. And I think Nico drinks water, but I don't know how much. But Clover, I love you, Clover. And they know that they're supposed to be drinking water, but it's tough for them to desire to drink plain water. And so, there's a lot of things you can get that flavor the water. Be careful what you're putting in your water, because then sometimes it's not even water anymore. There's some stuff you can get. I know there's a variety of products you can put in water to make them have more electrolytes. more electrolytes does not equal more hydration, which is something I learned recently. And it's more electrolytes is good, but it's not more hydration. But there are products that will actually help you be more hydrated. One of them is Liquid IV. Is that the name of it? I think that's the name of it. It's just, we're not sponsored by them. That's just a product we've seen that a lot of people swear by. But just, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of self-control and discipline and saying, I'm being mindful of how much water I'm drinking and I'm going to drink it now, because you need water. Everybody knows you need water because we're made mostly of water. But what we forget is that it supports all other areas of your health and even mental health. So you stay hydrated, you will feel better in your body, and your mind will be clearer. You'll be able, everything will function better. So if you're trying to lose weight, now there's a lot of reasons you might not be able to lose weight, but one thing that contributes to impeding progress in weight loss is not drinking enough water. And that's not always what the root cause of not being able to lose weight is, but it certainly does not help. And your general health will be better, like your immunity, and your stress and anxiety will be worse if you're dehydrated. If you suffer from depression, being dehydrated will make it worse. The lack of water makes things a lot worse. So making sure to stay hydrated is a great thing. Number one. So everybody get on your water.
Yeah. And I'll just share to add to what you said, AJ, my husband, is an oncology patient, a cancer patient. And he recently had this thing he was going through where his blood pressure was really low every time he went to check it. And his oncologist, his regular doctor, didn't say anything about it, but his oncologist said, I think you're dehydrated. You need to drink more water. And he's always been somebody that drank a lot of water, but he just recently started drinking Diet Cokes again. And we've had to say, okay, no, that's not good. Those are dehydrating you instead of helping you. They have caffeine in them. And I drink a lot of coffee. I need to drink more water. I admit it. But dehydration can make you feel lightheaded. It can cause your blood pressure to drop. You lose sodium. And so, yeah, I agree. Yeah. Drink your water.
I know I'm the one who preaches it all the time, but I have to consciously be aware of it myself. I'm not saying I'm the water goddess over here or anything. I need to stay on myself. I'm very bad about remembering. I had probably like a gallon of coffee yesterday morning, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting to do something. What is it? Oh, water. I finally had some water. and the more water you can drink, the better. It is possible to have water intoxication and get sick from drinking too much water, but it is not easy.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a hard thing to do. So you don't worry about drinking too much, because it'd be hard to get there. You'd be, drowning. So
yeah, I've only ever heard of one person that I know that was in the hospital because of drinking too much water. And it was a friend of mine whose mother was on the water diet. Remember the old water diet? We used to joke and say the only reason you lost weight was because you were running to the bathroom with all the water they made you drink. But she drank too much water and then went out in the sun and was sweating, and just one thing led to another, and she ended up in the hospital. But that's the only time I've ever heard of anybody drinking too much water. Usually it's people are dehydrated. And I know for a fact that I am probably dehydrated most of the time. Yeah, I went one time, funny story. I went one time, they do those seaweed wraps, the body wraps. And my friend Terry and I went and got a body wrap. And after we did the body wrap and they unwrap you and everything, supposedly you lose inches and weight. I gained weight. And I said, how could this be? How could I possibly gain weight but lose inches? And they said, because you were so dehydrated when you came in, your body probably absorbed all the water. I said, that's really
Sucked it all
sad, but
up.
it's probably true. And I even do that now. I know if I got to weigh myself while I'm Weight Watching, that I deliberately don't drink water after a certain time.
Yeah.
Because the more dehydrated I am, the less I'll weigh.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
I looked it up real quick just so everybody has a clear picture of what you're supposed to be drinking. The recommended is like 64 ounces of water a day, which sounds like a ton. But that's just two, if you've got one of those big 32-ounce Yeti cups or Stanley cups, those are, I think they're about 32 ounces, just two of those, and you're done. And I had a goal for a while of drinking 3 of them, and that was not too much water. It was almost 100 ounces of water, and I felt so bad when I stopped drinking that much water. I thought I had the flu, and it took me a while for it to kick in and realize, no, I was on a trip and was not carrying my Yeti around drinking my 32 ounces of water 3 times a day. So there you
I
go.
was looking it up while you were talking, and you're right, 64 ounces is what they recommend. Uh, when AJ's doctor told him about it, he said something about, and I don't see it offhand, so I won't try to make it up, but it was something about an ounce for every 2 pounds or something of
Oh,
your
that's
body weight.
interesting.
But I don't know the specifics on that, so I won't go there. But well, I already went there. But but yeah, it was something
Yeah,
like
they can
that.
look
So like if you're heavier, then you need to drink more water, is what he said. It goes by weight.
well,
So
that makes sense though,
yeah,
because you picture like somebody really tiny,
right.
like
Clover.
Angela Martin on The Office,
Yeah,
as
sweet
compared to
Angel.
Dwight, who's much larger. Everybody needs more water.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
the smaller you are, the less you can get away with drinking water. But
Mhm.
yeah, definitely I like the idea of having a Yeti. But if you can't afford that and you just want to get a good
Oh,
old
and
cup of tap water, that works too.
mhm. There are cheaper versions too. It's not hard to find them. It just, and I have one because it was a gift because somebody knew how well I like to be hydrated.
For sure. And you can also get, like you said, the off brands and all are cheaper, and they're almost as good as Yeti. Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ got me a couple of the cups that were on at Sam's. They were, when LSU won, they were LSU cups, and they were real expensive. And then when they had only, a handful of them left, they sold them for $10, which was $5 per cup because it was 2 cups. And they work great.
Nice.
They keep the water cold, or they keep my
Mm.
coffee hot, which I tend to use them more for coffee, but shame on me. But anyway, what don't do as we say, do it, or don't do as we do as we say. So drink a lot of water, like Priscilla, not me. I'll get
I
better,
try.
I promise. Well, this has been amazing. I thank everybody. We so appreciate the comments that we got back after our last one. It's
Yeah.
nice to know that somebody took the time to listen to our discussion on breast cancer awareness. And
Mhm.
so we thank you for listening. And again, thank you to Clover for the professional announcement.
Yeah.
And we want to encourage you to join us again next week. Our episodes will tend to drop on Saturday night or Sunday morning. And so be looking for those. But in the meantime, make yourself a priority.
And take care of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to keep up on all the latest sauce. See you next time.